Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends of CONVOCO, a very warm welcome to the CONVOCO Forum of 2016. Our topic this year is Authority in Transformation. Why have I chosen this theme? We are facing a bundle of challenges in the world today. Major refugee movements, terrorist attacks, a crisis in the Eurozone that still has to be solved, and of course the Brexit decision with all its implications mean extraordinary challenges to authorities. You recognize the nature of authority best by differentiating the concepts of power and authority. It is a mistake to equate the two terms, because power is different from authority. The biggest difference lies in their legitimation. Since Max Weber, authority has been accompanied by legitimacy. Power, however, exists even without legitimacy. It can be based on constraint too. Constraint, however, can damage authority. A population is aware of authority there where it voluntarily follows authorities. For example, when authority is being conferred through elections. Ruling by constraints implies a lack of legitimacy for the rulers. This difference is important because it implies that authority and freedom are no dichotomy. We often think that more authority means less freedom. Authority is equated to heteronomy and is seen as contradictory to freedom. We know that we can enjoy freedom only under certain conditions. It is the task of authority to establish these conditions so that freedom can be. Authority and freedom are thus no antagonism. There is a relation of cooperation between the two. Less authority does not automatically mean more freedom. This can be seen, for example, in the implications of the Arab Spring. In its process, the movement managed to overcome illegitimate structures of power through self-determination and the desire for freedom of the people. However, the lack of legitimate authorities made it impossible for the new freedom to furthermore prevail. Where comes the word authority from? Etymologically, authority is derived from the author, the creator, and the designer, and is ultimately rooted in the Latin word audere, which means multiply or grow. He or she who has authority bears responsibility. The more authority, the more responsibility. Germany, as most Western countries, has a representative democracy. In elections, we convey responsibility and authority to our representatives. Today's representative democracy is, however, very different from the original version of democracy in ancient Greece, which meant first and foremost immediate action without mediation or representation. Yet, our modern concept of democracy is also different from the democratic concept of 1949, when the German Constitution was adopted. Democracy in 2016 is a political process which we want to influence at any time. The concept of representative democracy has become a too limited one. We are getting the impression that the representative system and the big political parties have ignored our wish to participate. Representative democracy does not seem to correspond to our needs anymore. This has triggered a feeling of powerlessness, and in doing so, the assumption that representation as a form of self-government has failed. Direct democracy is seen as a solution. Today, there is a trend towards a dissolution of hierarchies and increasing inclusion. More people are to be involved in the decision-making process. The participatory culture is growing. In their demands, people today return to the promise of a radical democracy, according to Jean-Jacques Rousseau. We witness a fundamental transformation of our understanding of democracy. An important aspect here has had us choose the title of the forum, Authority in Transformation, instead of the Crisis of Authority. This transformation does not do away with the past. It rather constitutes a new layer of new forms in addition to the traditional forms of democracy. We are moving towards a multi-layered democracy, or a multiple democracy, as the historian Paul Nolte calls it. Democracy has not reached its end, but we are moving towards a different democracy. This is, among other things, a democracy of the law courts. Citizens appeal to law courts as an independent instance. The judicial legitimation of decisions has become an independent level of democracy. The phenomenon goes beyond the traditional idea of the division of powers. An example in this context would be the case against the OMT decision of the ECB. For the first time in the history of the Constitution, voters, instead of the bodies representing the nation, fought a program undertaken by an EU institution. The new form is a democracy of representation outside of the parliaments. New types of institutions and procedures of civil involvement, like Greenpeace, have come into being, as well as new types of procedures like, for instance, processes of mediation. Alas, we need to question the movement towards more direct democracy. We need to discuss the importance of the majority principle, especially when too much importance is accorded to citizens' protests. A current example would be Turkey. The victories of Mr. Erdogan's government were not achieved against the majority, but against the minority. In Poland, too, the government enjoys the support of the majority. At the same time, it hinders the rule of law. When is the plebiscite the right way to go? Was the Brexit a question the citizens could decide without any mediation in a referendum? Or did the governing authority share too much of its responsibility? A carefully thought-out judgment, which the citizens in a democracy owe to each other, must not be replaced by a superficial like. The new technologies of electronic communication bear a great democratic potential. However, only if we apply them responsibly. The call for more direct democracy and a transformation of our concept of authority implies a new form of the quest for stability and authority, that is, the citizens' own and direct responsibility. At the same time, other societal forces have developed, which are manifestations of the urge for authority and security too. This can be seen in the current and global shift to the right wing. The development of the election campaign in the USA, the Brexit referendum, and the growth of anti-establishment parties stem from the wish to better control one's own life. The paths of direct democracy and the need for national authority are both manifestations of the failure of the elites. These failed to recognize on time the discrepancy between development and the right of co-determination. There are many arguments against nation-state thinking today. The problems we need to solve in our times are transboundary, environmental protection, refugees and migration, the euro crisis. Positive technical developments like the internet and global communication are also arguments against nation statehood, which are, however, linked to our democracies today. Right now, we are living in a web of nation states. Their influence is important for our identities within institutions like the EU or the UN. Dealing with supranational problems does not necessarily mean the end of the nation state. We need to find the right balance in order to have a well-working Europe with equal partners live on. This requires, however, that our authorities are willing and able to explain complex matters to equal partners. I think one of the most important tasks of authorities today is guidance by explanation and thus leadership. I would like to end at this point. I'm very proud to welcome many important persons here today. In times like ours, we are called upon to accept even more responsibility. Let me pass the floor now to Sir Roger Scruton. Thank you.